What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart, or Professor Stewart, depending on how you know me. And welcome back to another edition of Dope People. And on this edition, like every edition, it's better than the last edition, and we are not letting you down today. I'd like to welcome to today's show, Dr. Barbara Mullen. Dr. Barbara Mullen, welcome to the show. So I'm going to go through your resume a little bit. I'm going to put a little spice on it, and then we're going to get into the episode. So let me introduce you professionally. Everybody out there, Dr. Barbara Mullen, she is currently the Assistant Sup for Student Services at Cambridge Public Schools, and that is in Massachusetts, right? The Assistant Superintendent. Dr. Mullen's main role, her primary responsibility, is to ensure that equitable practices are at the core of each system throughout CPSD in order to address and redress, get that part, because sometimes you got to go back and dig up some stuff, long-standing inequities and opportunities in student outcomes, because they don't be playing fair. And I know I said don't be playing. All you educators, don't judge me. I said it because it needed to be said like that. Her core role is to address and redress all that old stuff, let's call it just inequities. We're going to be nice. And opportunities in student outcomes. Before being the Assistant Sup for Student Services, Dr. Mullen was the Chief Equity Officer at Providence Public Schools and the Director of the Learning Leader Network for the Center of Leadership and Educational Equity. Dr. Mullen supported Rhode Island School Districts with continuous improvement toward equitable outcomes. Now, if you thought that was something, because that's powerful, Dr. Mullen, she's shutting it down, but that's not enough. Dr. Mullen is also an author, and she is the author of a book, Secure Your Oxygen Mask First. If you've ever flown on a plane, you know what that's all about. Strategies to prevent burnout in special ed practitioners. Go cop that. There's a link, it's in the show notes. She's also contributed to numerous publications, both digitally and in print, for those of you all who are tactile and need to hold something. Dr. Mullen currently lives in North Providence, Rhode Island, with her family. Dr. Barbara Mullen, man, how does it feel to hear yourself in your own resume? How does that make you feel?
I would say it makes me feel pretty darn good. Pretty good, but you know, when I keep working until, I keep working, I keep toiling, as the old folks say, until I hear, and she leaves to cherish her memory, cousins, niece, and a host of family and friends. So until I'm called to glory, I'm gonna just keep adding to it, right? Just keep adding service. So
well,
I always feel like it's good.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. So I don't even know why I put on the bow tie. I know why I put on the bow tie.
Well, thank you.
But let me loosen up the bow tie. Okay. Let's get into it. So that's your professional self, and we'll talk about that. But let's really let the people get to know you a little bit before we get into why you are on Dope People today. Are you prepared for a friendly game of this or that?
Yes, I'm ready for this or that.
And it's not much of a game because you're the only participant. I'm just the host. You're always the winner. You're always the winner. Okay. All right, so let's have a little fun. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. You know how it goes. You're familiar with how it goes a little bit, right? You just pick. If you want to expound, you can. You don't have to. We can just go through it and I can lead, I don't, but let's just have some fun. Okay, you ready?
Uh-huh.
All right. Here we go. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Comedy or horror?
Comedy.
That's good.
Oh.
Boat or plane?
Boat.
Singing or dancing?
Singing.
Reading or writing?
Writing.
Superman or Batman?
Superman.
So I got to make it equitable.
Okay.
Wonder Woman or Catwoman?
Wonder Woman.
Wow. Wow. Hip hop or R&B?
R&B.
That was kind of biased. I don't even like that I asked you that.
Because that's like saying
That's a stereotype.
mother or the mother or the child.
Well, is that okay? Well, I was looking at it different. Like I just assumed because you Black, you listen to R&B and rap. That was where I was. I felt bad. I judged myself in that question.
I mean, that just.
I'm so sorry. But so you like them both, is what you were saying. You like.
I do.
Okay.
I do, because I feel like hip hop is a derivative of R&B.
Wow. So then let me go here. This is a freestyle moment.
Okay.
You said hip hop. What did you say? Hip hop or R&B?
R&B.
You said R&B. Okay.
Yes.
80s R&B or 90s R&B?
Luther Vandross. He's in both.
He both. Luke, that's an 80s move. That's an 80s move.
I don't know.
But you have to pick because I'm not the contestant. I'm not the participant. 80s R&B or 90s R&B?
I'm gonna go with 90s. No, but okay. Can I just do a span? Can I say 80s, 85 to 95?
Well, if the name of the game was this, that, or make your own, you can do that. It's not.
90s. I would do 90s. I would do 90s.
I won't shake any other guest up like that again. That was way too difficult. So I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. It's not supposed to be that difficult, but so I won't do that again. Okay. Libraries or museums?
Museums.
Love or money?
Money.
I'm here for it. I ask almost everybody that. You're the first to say money. Everybody else goes with love.
I don't really think they know what love is.
Well, that's a new topic alert. Okay, we'll be back for that. We'll bring you back.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's start getting into it. Okay. Couch or recliner?
Couch.
Call or text?
Call.
Okay. Teachers or principals?
Teachers.
We're batting 100. We're batting 100. Every guest has said teachers. You thought about that. What were you thinking? I mean, not like what were you thinking, but like what were you deliberating?
So I was deliberating on the sentence that followed, even though there wasn't one. In my own narrative, I would say principals because of the research and the greatest impact on student learning is principals in a building. They create the conditions for teachers to teach. But the direct support are teachers. So if I have to choose, who am I thinking about? I'm thinking about teachers and what they need more than I'm thinking about principals. But if you would have said teachers or students, then I'm going to pick students.
Students all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. The argument, and these are my words now. So you said a couple of things that were interesting. You created a narrative that for yourself, which is interesting, right? But that's the words that I'm using out of my mouth is that there's an argument in the building between teachers and principals every day.
Oh.
I'm saying that, like,
oh, like they're having.
Yeah, teachers and principals are like,
okay, got it.
Cousins from the side of the family that ain't really cool with each other. Like, we know we family and we know we ain't going anywhere, but you know what I mean? Like, and trust me, I talk to teachers and principals and superintendents. I'm being real with you. I'm saying the stuff that you can't really say in the building. I'm bringing it up here. So we know that to be a thing. All right. So nights on the town or a quiet evening at home?
Night on the town.
Books or movies?
Movies.
Okay. Unions or non-unions?
Union.
Okay. Now we're going to kind of bring it on home here. Are you enjoying yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, let's bring it on home. I did the family or friends already. I think I'm out of them. So desktop or laptop?
Laptop.
Okay, here we go. Last question. Traditional learning, meaning in person or virtual, hybrid, online, e-learning?
Say one more time, traditional learning. So
like in-person, teacher in front of the class, students, structured 6.5 hours a day, or virtual, e-learning?
If it's of those two, virtual, e-learning, in-person learning.
All right. Well, there you have it. We know more about you now than that resume would ever reveal. Thank you for being a wonderful guest and participant of another edition of this or that. So Dr. Mullen, tell us, where are you from?
I hail from a couple of places. So I was originally born in Central California and lived there for a little bit, and not long enough to really remember much of it. And then my family, because my parents were originally from Chicago, relocated us to the south side of Chicago. So that's where I spent most of my formative years. I went to Curie Metropolitan High School, went to Northern Illinois University, and started teaching in Chicago Public Schools. And then my parents left to move to Houston because it was warmer. So I followed them there, but I also met my husband, had kids, kind of went on a lot of different places. And now I call Rhode Island home.
That's what's up. It's like Rhode Island is like the lowest population in the union.
Yeah.
What's the population out there?
I don't even know.
It's low. It's like really small.
A few million, a small.
Okay.
Chicago's
for the whole state.
Yeah.
For the state, exactly. That's what it is. That's right.
Yeah, we're really small. You can travel through Rhode Island from top to bottom in 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. Maybe we'll talk about that later. I'm really interested to know, Dr. Mullen, what kind of student were you when you think about those formative years? For me, I think about middle school, 6th grade through high school. What kind of student were you?
I was a student leader. So I was really insecure as a kid. I was secure in my knowledge, but not really in like building friendships. Cause growing up in Chicago, they'd clown you. You had to be the funny one, or you had to really like hold your own. And,
and nobody's off limits. Adults can get it too.
Everybody, equal opportunity. I saw this one girl roast this white woman on the train, on the bus from 59th Street all the way to Pulaski.
And
rode her. Right. She got off. I don't even think she was getting off at Pulaski.
But she just like, enough.
She's like, it's enough. I'm getting off. So I was a student leader. So I used leadership to build community and to be to make friends, etc. And then to like fill in where I thought I didn't have strength. So if there was academics, I like writing. I was the newspaper chief, editor in chief. I wasn't the greatest at it, but I used it as a way to like get better, get extra help with teachers. I was terrible at biology. I was just terrible. I was in the International Baccalaureate program, so one of the first classes out of Curie. And I struggled the entire time. I struggled with algebra, pre-algebra, algebra 2, calculus, every single math. I like struggled with it, but I joined the math decathlon team because I thought it would help me get better.
That was smart though, right?
I was like, I'll be the captain, because I knew it would require me to help, it would require me to learn what I needed to learn to show up for my team and to
That
get
was the
extra
term.
time.
And that was when you were describing that, the term that popped in my head was showing up.
Yep.
My dad never let me play basketball I'm 6'6", and I've been really tall my whole life. So my dad never let me really play basketball with anybody that was shorter than me. And he used to tell me, you got to show up. You got to show up to the competition so you get around people who are better than you. So that's what came to my mind. Did you always know that you wanted to be a teacher, Dr. Mullen? How did you get into that space?
Oh no, I didn't. I actually watched Boomerang one too many times, and I wanted to be an advertisement. Because I liked writing, creative writing, and I thought I could make ads. So I wanted to be working at an ad agency, and I did start in public relations and marketing. And then I got fired from one of my my second jobs. I actually started working with BET. So I worked an intern there and did a lot of fun stuff in entertainment. And then when I moved back to Chicago from Los Angeles, I started working at an agency, and a small one, and I got fired and I needed a job. So my dad was like, you need to sub because we're not going to send you no money and you can't come home. But my parents were both educators. My mom was a special education teacher and administrator. And I was like, I ain't finna do all that because I knew what that was. And so I went to sub. But as I was getting ready to prepare to take the basic test for subbing, I saw an ad pop up that said, oh, you could be out certification you could be in the classroom in like 6 weeks. And so I went into that program and ended up teaching special education and loved it. And I'm one of the few people for whom I think that alternative certification pathway actually really worked, because I did find such a passion for equity, social justice, just curriculum design, instruction, and even public relations in that area. So I just happened to, be there, but my parents were both in it. So I knew a lot about education before going into it.
So I want to dig into that a little bit. That's an interesting dynamic. I haven't also gone through the alternative certification process in Chicago Public Schools. So what grade level did you teach when you first started subbing? What grade level were you?
So I actually never subbed. I worked a summer while I was going through the prep program, and then they placed me in a classroom. I know it's very irresponsible, but they placed me.
Well, it was no way around it. I mean,
after 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go through the like program, and then they prep you for an emergency cert, and your first year is like your residency. So
I don't think with all the education, you'll never be able to avoid first year teaching.
Never.
It's impossible. I don't care how prepared you thought you were.
Right.
It'll never happen. It's gonna flop your first year, unless you're just like a prodigy. And even the prodigies rethink their whole life.
Yes.
It's just, it is what it is.
One kid that will come in and try you. My first year though, I was a primary cross-categorical special ed teacher. So the class that, there's a whole lot of openings for. And that was first through fourth grade.
Let's talk about that. That's a group of students that get really left out of the conversation, particularly when you talk about equity. Right? Most of the time when we talk about equity, we're only talking about race and gender, right?
Yep.
For the most part, but we're not talking about students with special needs or the special ed students on every part of that spectrum, from just needing an IEP to having some severe deficiency. When did it become yours? When did it become your purpose? What was that experience that made it become your purpose?
So I think only recently, in my previous, I'd always thought that, working with students with disabilities was a way to impact the world in a way that was always left behind. And I've always had a like, I'll do it mentality. And so as a systems leader, that is, you have to design your system around, when you're talking about equity, for the students for whom the system is serving the least, which every metric will tell you that students with disabilities. And then I began to really orient my equity conversation. I even just had a conversation with a colleague today about intersectionality and how, like, if you are not talking about the intersection of race and ability, then you are not in this conversation. You are like only got a toe in the equity conversation, but you're not fully immersed in it. And I could tell you that first year, I didn't know anything about teaching. I had a mentor teacher. I just was learning about like teaching pedagogy, really getting into the mix of direct instruction. And I had a student who I actually recently heard from. She just graduated from Chicago State. I've been teaching that long. And I connected with her through another colleague. And I remember she was in my classroom and she would like be very close to the paper all the time. And, for students in CPS, there's a lot of different barriers to learning they could have. They could, just not have food that day, right? But for her, I would always notice that she was close to the paper. And so when it was time for her reevaluation, her every 3-year evaluation, in which she's supposed to get this kind of whole battery done again, as a first year teacher, and this had to maybe even be like November, so I was only 3 months in, I said, I know I don't know a lot here, but I like this student, she, let's call her like Sarah. Sarah is really like, she's looking closer at papers. I noticed that Sarah really cannot see. So vision is not a full battery, is not a part of a full individual evaluation. They assume though that you have a vision screener and a hearing screener, all of those other things. And I remember the school psychologist was just like, just a little like ego taken back, like, okay, and what you want me to do about that? And I was like, I think she needs to be screened because she can't see. I know there's like a bus that comes from Lens Crafters. Can we, do that first before she's evaluated so that she can see all the evaluation materials? And they were like, okay, we'll push it back. We'll push it back till after the bus comes and she goes to Lens Crafters. So she went to Lens Crafters, she got her glasses. And this child, she didn't qualify. She literally was exited from specialized services because she had a visual impairment. She did not have a learning disability. And now that I really know the technicality around it, I can put things in place as a system and all these other things as an executive leader. But as a first year teacher, that raw instinct of just do what's right and speak up, even though you whisper, is how I think, one person put it. Even if you have to whisper, use your voice. And I'm telling you, I was whispering because I'm young too. I'm like 25 or 24.
And I imagine that counselor is kind of like cutting you, like you knew, like you give
Right,
you all of that, like.
And this is a 3-year reevaluation. So
right.
this is
you messing up.
Right. We don't already crossed this bridge. We know she got a disability.
Right.
And it really was like, talk about fresh eyes, literally. Right.
Right. So, no pun intended. Right.
Right. So it was one of those things, where we really, and not to say that students with disabilities, there's no hope. Like once you get into special ed, there's no hope. But we do really create a system where they are the broken toys, like they're in the land of the broken toys and forgotten toys. And that's not my problem. I don't teach them. That's them over there. And we really track them, because I have now, since that first year, I've taught every grade in addition to adults in higher education as well with disabilities. And we do track students. We do, as a system, track students. And so we have to be very mindful of when we're evaluating and when we refer children and when we say, no, they got to go over there. That's not my responsibility. And that day was when it became like, that was definitely a win for Sarah, for the student, who has graduated from Chicago State. Her life trajectory is completely changed.
Right. Because had you not, and I would imagine Sarah, was frustrated herself, because she probably like, I don't even belong in here. I just can't see. Sarah probably didn't have a voice.
She didn't have a voice. And that was the other thing. Immediately after her results came back, which we're talking about weeks, right? So after her results came back, she was transferred out of my class and into just a general education 5th grade class, but she was behind, because the other issue is you throw kids into this classroom and now the rigor of instruction is low. Because I had kids in the class with no learning disability, right? Just couldn't see. I had kids with learning disabilities. I had kids with, traumatic brain injury. I had kids with behavioral disabilities. So it was literally a cross-categorical classroom, which we do not have anymore by title, but we still do it sometimes. And so she was not getting the level of rigor that would allow her to be caught up. But she did eventually, because it's right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we have to tell folks that, stop referring kids to special education because they can't read in 1st grade. Like, you can't do a lot of things in 1st grade. That's not an indicator of what your capacity is going to be when you're 25.
Who's doing that and why they doing that?
Everybody's doing it because
they're doing it too. Is it? Look, I got to go here now. Is it proportionately us that they doing it to? Are they doing it to others at the same rate? Because I don't know. I'm asking you.
No, well, and that's the thing. So it is disproportionately, right? And it's disproportionate now. Now it's disproportionate with learning disability, was disproportionate at first with learning disability. Then it was behavior. And that actually will track, you can track the referral of African-American students, namely boys, with the public housing. And then you can also track it with integration initiatives, and you can track it with the crack epidemic.
Let me ask you this, because this is, we only here for a short time. Good time, not a long time. We right. But we got, I'm looking at who deserves a part 2, a follow-up conversation. This is structured for less than an hour because of people's attention span. But I gotta ask you this, so I want to ask you, do you, I just want your opinion. Do you agree with integration? What's your thoughts about integration? Was that good for us, or was that good for us, particularly in education, right? Was that good for us, or what are your thoughts about that?
No, it wasn't good. So when you say, do I agree with it? I think Brown versus Board of Education, the law is all about interpretation. And everybody interpreted as, separate but equal, or integration. What I interpreted it as is run me my money so I can have my school with my responsive educators and families and community schooling and everything. But fast forward, 60, however many years now, that ship has sailed. And there are freedom schools, right? There are charter schools that are ran specifically with Black liberation theology and pedagogy, Black liberation. My own child was in a Black liberation theology early childhood experience. And then when we moved to a public school in Rhode Island, she all of a sudden was gifted and talented. So it depends, because they had a measure of excellence for her. And she was actually gifted. Both of my kids were in that early child and early learning experience. when the roads converged and we came to integrate again into Rhode Island, she was all of a sudden gifted and talented. And my 3-year-old then was referred for every specialized service, for which I said, no, I'm not. So you have two children that when they're in a homogenous learning environment homogenous learning environment, such as a like Black school, it's called Imani at that, right? But when they're in a space like that, you're able to be seen as an individual. Your identity is able to be seen because what leads in an environment like that is not your race. That's affirmed naturally. Like they had Black history, they did Black history projects every week, not in February. Um, and the expectation for what you're able to accomplish is high, and it doesn't matter. So when I say, did integration help us? Absolutely not. It helped if you could navigate it, but we lost tens of thousands of educators of color with integration. You know, it dropped the property values in communities because the Black kids came into the schools and the white families moved out of the neighborhood. So everything is all, and nothing happens in a silo, in a vacuum. But what I will say, back to your question around like when did specialized service, special education become my thing? I think back at that moment when I was working with that student, it began my awakening in thinking about, I can do this, and what, and I can teach. I think that's the other piece, is there are a lot of teachers that don't truly believe they can teach any child that comes across their table. And so what I often tell people is that equity work is identity work. It is first unpacking who you are as a person, what you value. And for many educators, white or other, or educators of color, Black, otherwise, when they identify as educators, it really depends on the social construct. Black educators oftentimes identify themselves as mentors. They don't necessarily identify them as instructional practitioners. White educators identify themselves as instructional practitioners first, right? And gatekeepers. I got to be able to get this information. If you don't get it, too bad, then you didn't cut the mustard. And Black educators are like, I'm here for you. We gonna change the world. It's about relationships, but they're not building their pedagogical practice. And so one of the things that stumps both of them equally is when they get a student with disabilities in front of them. That student cannot learn, and it's not your fault. And that's what I tell teachers, like, this student is not able to learn this content right now, and it's not your fault. It's not you. And it's not that they don't have the capacity, it's just that they have a disability. And so now they're going to have services, they're going to get support, and now you've got to change your practice. But then that gets everybody all riled up. Wait, I got to do something different. Hold on. And so that's the identity crisis that people have, is like, I think I'm a good educator. I'm a rock star teacher. And that child makes me feel like I'm not, because they got something going on with them. And so most people have a dissonance where they either say, well, that's not my responsibility, I don't have to teach them, or they say, or they do say, like, I'm going to try everything I can. I'll take more PD, I'll take more training, I'll come sit wherever I can to learn how to support this child. And when I saw that I was that teacher first, of like, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm gonna be brave for this student, then I begin to say, like, this is a path for me. And this is, and now as an administrator, and a public speaker and a trainer and all those other things, like, to have that, I want teachers to have that spark that, like, even if you whisper, speak.
Absolutely mind blowing. I appreciate everything you just said. Mic drop. I don't need to add on to any of that. Your words, absolutely phenomenal. And I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it. You said a couple of things. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the replay myself and digest this, because it's absolutely phenomenal. Let's talk a little bit about what else you're doing. You seem to be very busy and you are dope people stamped. Let me give you your, I normally don't give a stamp to the end of the show. You're the first person to get the stamp, right? In the third quarter, like, man, MVP, you are dope people in this space of education, especially. So you seem pretty busy, but I heard you say you got a couple kids, maybe there's a husband, you know, sounds like there's a husband who's, you ain't gave up, he ain't gave up, he ain't gave you up, so that's good. What are you doing outside of being an assistant soup and aspiring to do more? What are you doing? What else are you up to?
So it's interesting you asked that. I actually just stepped down from a few other responsibilities. So I am a part, you know, Black women, if we in a sorority, we're gonna tell you. So I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
There you go. Go ahead, sis. Do you think?
And honestly, I have been leading that local chapter for the last 3.5, almost 4 years. And I recently stepped down from there to serve specifically just like focus on my undergraduate members here, who I see as kind of, they need a little bit of help. And so it's, you know, I can't do everything. So I stepped down to really focus on supporting them. But still an active member, still support on our state level and regional level. I attend church, but I recently stopped leading women's group there because I needed to focus. And I also serve on 2 nonprofit boards. So I serve on the United Way of Rhode Island Board of Directors, where I really support on the finance committee, and I support to really make sure they have almost a, I think now we have about a 11 million endowment, that we just received from Mackenzie Scott, just Jeff Bezos' ex-boo. And that investment is so substantial and so really helping lead to see how those critical investments can be leveraged to do what I'm still committed to do, right? Increasing equity, specifically in education and housing in the state of Rhode Island, which are some really big issues. And then I also sit on the Water Fire Arts Board. I'm the vice chair of that board. I really love that. So, you know, I have to tell people.
You got stuff going on, sis.
I do, but you know what? I love Chicago, and I just came back. I was back home in August. And you know, we have the Bud Billiken Parade and we have the Taste of Chicago, but I always tell people, if you can find your way here in any time between Memorial Day and Labor Day, go to Water Fire here in Rhode Island. It's so beautiful.
Really?
And it really is. Like, we light the river on fire. You know how we dye the river, Chicago River green? Like, we light the river on fire here, and it is beautiful. Like, it's nothing you've ever seen. The whole city is like a bonfire, and nothing's actually burning, but it's really, really beautiful. So I sit on that board to really just kind of appeal to another arts. And then the last thing is that I am doing consultancy work. So I do consultancy specifically.
Talk about that. What's the name? Talk about what are you all doing? What's
Sure.
the name of it?
So Mullen Consulting Services. And what I'm focusing on specifically is developing leadership development, consulting services, diversity, equity, and inclusive strategic planning for districts, and data literacy. So really data literacy for equity. That's the big lift. The big lift is the data literacy. I've really dug into data literacy for equity for community members. So I'm talking about parents. I've done training and workshops for parents, for parent groups in the state of Massachusetts, and for parent groups in the state of Rhode Island, to really help their voice, to help them really have a voice and not be timid when they get into either parent-teacher conferences and they don't really know all this data and all these tests that people are talking about when they talk about their kids, or when they go to a board meeting and they need to really advocate for something at the school district level. They know the MCAS, RICAS, whatever state assessment, whatever curriculum-based assessment, to really help them bare bones. What's the difference between qualitative and quantitative data? What's the difference between a student conference and a teacher conference? What's the difference between an IEP evaluation and just a regular, referral for discipline? So really helping families understand the data literacy conversation for all the data, and I'm gonna keep it 100, that all of these folks are getting paid to collect on students. These are their students' data. This is their students' story, and they need to be active participants in that conversation around data literacy. So I've been consulting with nonprofit orgs and state agencies to really help them build that programming for families.
That is phenomenal. And I think that's super important, particularly in the age that we live in today, where absolutely everything is data driven, even down to social proof. So super important, super exciting to hear that you're on the forefront of that in that space. Let's get to it.
We didn't get to it yet.
We ain't even got to it. I had to push my meeting back. I was scheduled to have a 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock your time. I'm running behind.
Okay.
And that guy's important. He's important too.
Oh no.
This is important. He's gonna be mad. He's one of my former students, young 30-year-old guy who just left teaching and is embarking on some entrepreneurial endeavors. So we have a scheduled meeting, but I asked him for 15 minutes. But let's dig into it. Keeping that in mind, let's get through it. What's working for you in education right
now? Yeah, so I would say what's working for me. For me personally, I think the relationship that I have with my parent groups is working. And I think I like to and my education.
Phenomenal. Because we know without these parents.
Nah.
We know without the parents.
Yeah. I think,
and what was the other? You said parents and another group.
And so my labor partners. So I say educators, but I call them labor partners because they are technically like they're the, we have the AFT and then the National Education Association. And so we have a National Education Association. And I would say those two relationships are really working to set me up to be successful for children. Because, when you talk about like, if you were to say in any conversation, we play this or that, if you were to say superintendents or principals, I say principals or teachers, at no point is it going to be like parents, do we throw them in there, because you're thinking about that through line all the way down to the student. But I like to really think about it in terms of this like cocoon shell that we build around kids of support, and all of those educators are important, but parents are important. The lady that runs the bodega where all the kids stop in and get the treats before school, and they shouldn't be eating Flamin' Hots, but here we are, Flamin' Hots at 2 a.m. Like those people are important, and the pastors are important, the after school, out of school time providers are important. And so I'm beginning to think about how I kind of structure my relationship building with those folks. And that is really working, because what that has done is allowed for me to do what I think most system leaders want to do, which is come in and create change. But nobody likes change, right? Except a wet baby. And even still, it's still warm to them. So they really still don't want change. And so it really is one of those things where change management is a struggle. And once you get to this level, this is where all of my PR and marketing kind of expertise comes in, because it is about how it's never, when I talk about equity, it's never the what, or the why. Like I could make a compelling case as to why things need to change for kids. I could even say, hey, this is a research-based, evidence-based practice. Everybody should go do it. But it's the how and the who that is very critical. And a lot of times systems leaders come in, they clean shop, they fire everybody, or they bring in their friends, which you should never do. And they start telling everybody what to do. And they hardly ever engage parents in an authentic way. They kind of just like, hey, how you doing? Kiss babies, like this politic way, but never an authentic way. I meet with my parent groups every 2 weeks. And I meet with my labor partners every month. And I tell them, these are the things I'm working on. This is what we're thinking. This is where we're going. What do you think? This is the problems that we're confronting. These are the constraints we have as a district. What do you think? Or where do I need to advocate for? And the parents will say, like, these are some problems I'm seeing. This is what I'm having. This is what other parents are saying. Or the teachers will say, this is a struggle. This is a problem. Can you please say this when you are in, cabinet meetings, et cetera. And that is working because it's budget season and it is time to start making changes. And I believe, at least I hope, but I also have flat out asked, like, so this is what I'm thinking. So now when I get before the board and I need votes for the board to like vote and approve something, or I need to start rolling out things with principals, or I need to start having conversations with other cabinet members, I don't get this community pushback from parents and I don't get this teacher pushback from teachers because they already knew what was coming. And I also do that same thing with principals. But I value the parents because, you know, it's just a community of folks that I feel like we often push them against the wall. We push their back against the wall and we almost force them to react in a way that is very frustrating for us and sometimes inhibits school leaders from doing the work. But I'm like, you could have avoided all of that if you would have just had a 2-hour conversation with parents, to really kind of help them see what was going on and what's to expect, et cetera, and listen. So I think that's working. And I think that that's a practice that other superintendents are working to adopt, and some could do better.
That's dope. That's dope. I'm glad you said that, parents. And I'm glad you gave me that new option for this or that. I'm gonna go teachers or parents and see what comes of that. My next question to you, as we begin to wrap up, is what is keeping you up at night? If it's something different than the inequity piece, is there something else that's keeping you up at night that's kind of frustrating, got you scratching your head? What is that? What's not working for you in education?
I think, it is the word equity and anti-racism. I'm scratching my head now. It is the co-optingness of it. It's the oversaturation of it. It is, one of the reasons why, and you could publish this and this is fine with me, but I tell people this honestly, one of the reasons why I left being a chief equity officer, which a lot of emerging research is confirming, is because it is performative in many ways. And it is in education equity, much as in health equity, housing equity, food equity. If you don't understand the field itself and how to change the everyday practices, it's going to be tough to see the outcome you want, to push it. And people will just pat you on the head and say, oh, that's a wonderful PD. Look what you did for that Black History program. That's so nice. It'll be performative. And you will throw words around like anti-racism, liberatory, intersectionality, equity, blah, 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 healing spaces, social emotional learning, all these trauma, all of these other things. And then it just becomes noise. And what I have really struggled with is I have honestly struggled with who owns equity, who gets to be the voice in it. Is it automatically educators of color? Is it automatically, folks who are disenfranchised? Who owns it? And what keeps me up at night is sometimes the very explicit separation from educational equity and teaching and learning. Even if we're talking about students' food, even if we're talking about their social, emotional, mental health, mental well-being, as educational agencies, we are responsible for teaching and learning. And when we have a conversation that is so far removed from teaching and learning, then I'm like, we're not talking about educational equity anymore. And it's not to say that education is in a vacuum. We are dependent on other social determinants like health, like housing, like, Medicaid, Medicare. But we're only one agency, so we can't take care of everything, but we have to be wrapping around our kids and supporting in partnerships. And that's a fine conversation to have. But I think people have been so like, they have really started to move the conversation, and sometimes it's scary because then you begin to get vilified as like, well, there's other outcomes that are important to kids. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not expecting you to like be responsible for the health, the like medical, physical health of a kid, because you're not a doctor, you're not a hospital. Like, this is not, there are other metrics of children's health. And if you think that a child needs medical attention, you better call 911 and get them to the hospital. But don't require the school to turn into a hospital because we're not equipped, all in the name of equity. And so those are the things that keep me up at night. And that's even more so why I lean into really tough conversations with families, community members, stakeholders, educators, so that we can come closer to seeing what this vision is for equity for children.
Continue to impress. Amazing answer, by the way. Final question.
Yeah.
Final question for you is, what are we preparing students for? What is actually, and I apologize for hitting you with that, because that was not the plan's final question. The planned final question is, how do you see the future of education?
Mm-hmm.
But you've touched on so many things that I had to pivot. It's like, so what, from your perspective, should we be educating, preparing students for? I was prepared to get a college degree, get a job, get married, and retire, and take care of my family, and live to have grandkids and die. Okay, leave them an insurance policy. That's what I was prepared for. Go to school, get a job. In 2022, what should we be preparing students for? I really want, and it's such a loaded question, because my question is, what are we? And what should we be preparing students for?
I think that the world we live in is going to be one that we co-construct with students, but there's also a limit to that, because I love student voice, but I'm a little old school. I'm also like, developmentally, there are some things that we should not ask children to problem solve around. We shouldn't even ask young adults to problem solve around. We should listen to their voices and understand their needs, but we should not ask them to problem solve around certain things, because developmentally, it might actually delay their ability to like build and develop the way
Give me an example. Give me an example of something we shouldn't ask them to problem solve around.
So one example is curriculum. So I need to know what you're interested in learning.
Because you need to know. Okay, keep going.
So I need to know what you're interested in learning. I need to know how you want to learn. I need to know what you want to learn. You can't be at the table when we're doing curriculum audits.
Curriculum audits.
Audits.
We can do curriculum creation with the students.
And I think that there's a piece for students to really think about. Because here's the other thing that I often challenge adults, and I challenge folks when they talk about student voice and student learning, right? Student learning and development goes from concrete to abstract, right? So as they're building curriculum, as they're thinking about curriculum, what is a student's capacity to be? And this is an open question, because I don't know every student in the whole world. I just know child development. So what is their capacity to really think about how you build a scope and sequence for a curriculum, and how you move from concrete to abstract as you want to build depth of knowledge for students? And that's something that's hard to teach adults when they're lesson planning.
Absolutely. You see me, I'm starting to sit back in my chair like,
right, you're like, now wait a minute, we won't even talk about that. And so the reality is not, and so I use this analogy. I always go, the user is not always the manager, right? It's not always the builder. I use a cell phone. That does not mean I need to be up at Samsung making the phone or running Samsung, but they better not make a phone without thinking about me, because they won't sell no phones. If they don't know,
And to your point, you don't even know what you would need. You don't know what you would need. Like you never knew that you could benefit from having music on your phone.
exactly.
Okay.
But
Okay.
people do understand. So, and I just and people do understand. I think we can always do a better job of leveraging the collective expertise. I don't tell people like, oh, kids can't do this, kids can't do that. I say kids are experts in their lived experience. People, they're experts in their own story. So you have to have that in mind when you're building things like curriculum, when you're doing the budget. You have these meetings, you have it, but you leverage their expertise. So I digress because I got off. You had asked me like, what do kids need to be developed? You know, what do they need to be prepared
What are we
for?
preparing them for? What should we be preparing?
And so I think student voice is important, but I also see where we are not doing a good job of helping students develop their voice in schools. And so what you were prepared for is fine. I think there's good merit in being able to like write, hey, I need a job, I need it, you know, because that in itself contributes to a value and quality of life that impacts generations, your generations, future generations' ability to reach a level of self-actualization. And so what we really need to be thinking about, and I have this conversation a lot when we do like portrait of a graduate. So many people will be like, what kind of graduate do we want CPS to graduate? And they do this little quadrant with a graduation cap, and there's these all competencies and skills. And so they put social emotional health, and I kick it out. I'd be like, wrong, nope. I said, because let me tell you, if you're a Black person in the United States, you wake up triggered every day. I said, so we're already resilient. Wrong. We need to teach them how to funnel that resilience, what to do with that resilience, how to leverage it. Oh, college career ready. I said wrong. I said kids can be college and career ready. They can be top of their class, go to Harvard and experience racism and be traumatized. I had a really good friend as a CPS graduate, went to Harvard Medical School, had to take a year off because of the racism. Finally graduated, great dermatologist, but it was a struggle. I said, so wrong.
And is forever triggered.
Forever triggered.
And it's forever
he won't even come visit us. Look, because he like, I ain't coming back to New England.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what we have to prepare students for, yes, college career ready is fine. Yes, resiliency is fine for students who need that. But you need to prepare children for critical consciousness.
Wow. Not even critical thinking, critical consciousness.
No. Critical
you know, I hate to do it, but you so heavy, Dr. Mullen. You so heavy in this space. I got to bring you back because we need to unpack. And I don't even know if we need to unpack on dope people. I just think we need to unpack. But the people that listen to this show, they are your peers. They're soups. Yep. They're soups from the UK. They're soups from Australia that listen to this show, and all across the United States, heavily in Chicago, I'm sure. Teachers, principals, network chiefs, that's who's listening here. You're heavy. You're real heavy. And I see why you were, vetted to be on here. And you are certified dope. I purposely want to leave the listeners wanting more. We're not gonna give it all to them.
Don't give them all.
No. Y'all gotta write that check for this. And you need to see, where can they get with you? Where can they get with you?
Sure. So of course,
it's gonna be in the show notes. We'll have the links, but tell them right now anyway.
Absolutely. I was gonna say, well, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Dr. Barbara Mullen.
That's right. And then same on Twitter.
At Dr. Barbara Mullen.
At Dr. Barbara Mullen. No,
you active on Twitter?
I am. I don't get in all the mess, but I do look. I see it.
Says the person who started the mess. I don't get it.
And I like to retweet a lot of other soups who are, in the space. I like to retweet articles, and then sometimes I just retweet crazy stuff that I'm doing and my family and things like that. But Dr. Barbara Mullen on Twitter, Dr. Barbara Mullen in LinkedIn, and I'm taking a like Facebook, Instagram hiatus right now. And then of course, I am who I am, so I don't mind. I had somebody when that whole CRT issue was going out, send my stuff to Tucker Carlson and Fox News. So I don't really care. Anybody that wants to reach me can email, what have you. I'm available to the good family to be able to have these conversations one-on-one this time.
Well deserved, well deserved. I always refer to myself as the yay of youth business development education. And I feel like I'm sitting down with, I won't put you in the J, but I feel like I'm sitting with Beyonce right now of education. Like you on fire. You on fire. Tell your husband I said so too.
I
will. He ought to make sure you eat well tonight. I don't know what's going on, but tell him to take care of you because you was on fire today.
Thank you.
You lit that on fire today. Great interview. Great time listening to you, having you on here. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Are there any final words you want to say to the people before we get out of here tonight?
I only have one thing to say, and that is, everybody that is either listening or, coming in has probably all been dealing with the same thing I've been dealing with for the last 24 months, and that's the COVID response. There's a lot of issues and a lot of conversation and panic around learning loss and acceleration. And what I want to tell people is, you can really, you can take your time. You can, it is a pandemic. There is learning loss in some areas for children. Like there just is. For families, for us, we've lost things that we could have learned if it were a regular year. But if we don't have the time to do it again, then we really need to take the time to do it right the first time. So we can take the time to get it right for kids, for families, for ourselves. We deserve that. We have put so much effort in the last 2 years that we really deserve to slow down and really be in community and hear from our families and students what they need to move forward.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. I think we all needed to hear that.
For sure.
We have to reduce. I just posted something about reducing classroom stress. So telling folks just slow down. This is super, super important. Mm-hmm. Dr. Barbara Mullen, again, it has been such a pleasure having you on. I absolutely look forward to you coming back. We need you back. Let's have a little bit more conversation because you've got some value to add. You are the table. Thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you so much. And for everybody listening or watching, you already know what it is. So until next time, peace.
Thank you.